Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lesser Known But Awesome Heroes. And how ironic that finally a character that you see in my intro or towards the end of it for this segment finally is going to get his own video. That's right. Today, guys, I'm going to be talking about Ted Sallis, the murky, swampy, supernatural monster character from the Marvel Universe, simply known as Man-Thing. So let's get underway. Okay, Man-Thing first appeared in Savage Tales #1 in May of 1971, and he was created by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, and Gray Morrow. Or Gary Morrow, however you want to pronounce that. He also, looking here, he would be featured in many various titles and in his own series, including Adventure into Fear, which would actually debut the character of Howard the Duck. Steve Gruber's 39 issue run on this series is a cult classic that was influential to such writers as Neil Gaiman. He is also a large, moving, empathetic humanoid creature that lives in the Florida Everglades near the Seminole Reservation in the fictitious town of Citrusville. Ted Sallis his team affiliations have been the Nexus of All Realities, which he is guardian of, the Thunderbolts, the Daydreamers, and the Legion of Monsters. His abilities are that he has empathetic senses, superhuman strength, and durability. He has the ability to secrete a powerful corrosive chemical agent, aka sulfuric acid, and a counter agent that is actually like a lather type based deal that could neutralize the acid. He also has the ability to teleport himself and others through the Nexus of All Realities, and he speaks the universal language. Now, the interesting thing about the character in terms of his powers is that he actually doesn't have a brain. Excuse me, he doesn't have a brain, which is rather interesting. He's made completely of vegetable matter through a synthetic interaction of mystical energy and chemical mutagens. Although he lacks the normal human intelligence and shed any desire to communicate with human society, he nevertheless even became an accidental superhero as he stumbles upon various crime or horror scenarios in the Florida Everglades. From Hank Pym's belief, Man-Thing is sentient, though he is difficult to speak with. For example, he once rescued an infant and left the child with a doctor who would require an understanding of the function of a doctor and the ability to navigate a specific address. He is shown to understand concepts, however, like ringing a doorbell, how to put an arm in a sling, and even how to flip an auto-destruct switch. The change in his intelligence can partly be explained by the fact that its brain, sensory organs, and central nervous system are now organized in a completely different fashion than a human. For example, his auditory receptors are actually in his forehead, and regardless of what level of humanity the creature still possesses, it can discern when a person's motivations are evil, which causes it pain and motivates it to lash out. In other words, if Man-Thing senses a negative emotion like fear or anger or hostility, or any such thing like that, that'll cause the sulfuric acid touch, but also discern Man-Thing into actually lashing out and fighting this person. He also possesses a variety of superhuman powers, which I've described above. Interestingly enough, he can sense human emotions and is enraged by fear and automatically secretes the sulfuric acid, like I said. Anyone feeling fear and clutched by Man-Thing is prone to being burned chemically or mystically alive. Whoever knows the fear burns at the touch of the Man-Thing. Let's see. However, many survived being burned, notably Ellen Brandt, Nightcrawler of the X-Men, whom he does not even scar, and Mongue, whose hand is permanently attached to his axe. Either due to intervention or deception, unusual psychic and mystical forces react to which passes as the brain cells located in his body. These unique forces render him extremely sensitive to emotions. Emotions that are mild or generally considered positive arouse curiosity, and sometimes Man-Thing will observe from a distance. However, emotions that are often viewed as negative, such as violent emotions, hate, rage, anger, etc., cause him great discomfort and may provoke him to attack. Once provoked into violent actions, he will secrete the sulfuric acid that I've been talking about, which is so strong that it can actually burn human beings to ash in a matter of seconds. Even individuals that have high standards of superhuman durability have proven unable to withstand the potent acid. While he is devoid of violent emotions, his body produces a type of spongy, soapy mucus that can neutralize the acid. His superhuman strength varies considerably from his comic book appearance. It is established that he originally had the physical strength beyond the limitations of any human athlete. He is only slightly stronger than Captain America, but in later appearances he has been proven to show sufficient superhuman strength to be able to stand toe-to-toe with much more powerful villains. He's also been shown to be able to lift like 2,000-pound auto vehicle when subsequently moved to do so. And his body is also invulnerable to harm, meaning if you blasted him in the chest with a shotgun, he would just regenerate swamp matter into it, kind of like, and many have actually compared the character to Swamp Thing. And, dutifully so, and there's been many debates, but we're not going to get into that. But, yeah, pretty much, I could go on, but, I'm pretty sure you guys get the gist of Man-Thing by now. So, allow me to get into Man-Thing's actual, origins, shall we? Okay, young biochemist Dr. Theodore Ted Sallis is a native of Omaha, Nebraska, and he was working in the Everglades as part of Dr. Wilma Calvin's Project Gladiator team, which included Barbara Morris and her fiancé Paul Allen. Dr. Wendell is later cited as being on the staff after Dr. Calvin is shot. The group is attempting to recreate the super soldier serum that created Captain America. And in Web of Spider-Man Volume 2, Issue 6, is revealed that Sallis at one point treated and also worked alongside Curt Connors shortly before Connors' arm was amputated, driving the research that would eventually transform Connors into the Spider-Man villain known as the Lizard. Though warned that the technological terrorist group AIM was operating in the area, Sallis breaches security by bringing with him his lover, Elaine Brandt, referred to as Miss Brandt, but later reconned to be his wife. He destroys his notes to his formula, which he has memorized. Later, he is ambushed and learns that Brandt has betrayed him. Fleeing with the only sample of his serum, he injects himself with it in hopes of saving himself. However, he crashes his car into the swamp where the chemical, and as Man-Thing number 1 later explained, mystical forces instantly transformed him into the slow-moving plant matter creature that he is today. Unable to speak and with dim memories, he attacks the ambushers and Brandt, burning and scarring part of her face with an acid he now secretes in the presence of violent emotions. He would then wander away into the swamp. Sallis' mind was apparently extinguished, though on rare occasions he can briefly return to consciousness within his monstrous form, as in Doctor Strange Volume 2, Issue 41 in June of 1980, and Peter Parker Spider-Man Annual 99, and even to his human form, as in Adventure into 1213 in April of 1973, Marvel 2-in-1, number 1 of January 1974, Marvel Comics Presents Issue 164 of April of 1994, and Man-Thing Volume 3, Issue 5, 7, and 8 in April to June or July of 1998. Under writer Steve Gruber, Man-Thing would encounter the sorceress Jennifer Kale, with whom he briefly shared a psychic link and who knew his true identity. In a story arc that ranged in Fear issue 11 through 13, the final issue in which established that the swamp had mystical properties as the nexus of all realities. Though an interdimensional portal in Fear issue 19, he meets Howard the Duck, who becomes stranded in this reality. He becomes the guardian of the nexus and found himself facing demons, ghosts, and time-traveling warriors. While continuing to encounter such non-supernatural antagonists such as ravenous land developers, fascist vigilantes, and common criminals, he formed a bond with young radio DJ Richard Roy and nurse Ruth Hart, and in issue 12's Song Cry of the Living Dead Man about institutionalized writer named Brian Lazarus, spawned Gruber's Perhumorous published 2012 sequel, The Screenplay of the Living Dead Man, in 3-issue miniseries, The Infernal Man-Thing. In Man-Thing Volume 2, November to 1979 to July of 1981. Now, writer Chris Claremont would introduce himself as a character in the final issue, as Gruber had in the finale of the first series. Additionally, Claremont temporarily became the Man-Thing after being stabbed to death. He and his other characters' deaths were later resolved with the intervention of the War as Hell series lead John Kowalski, now an aspect of Marvel Comics' manifestation of death. In Volume 3, December of 97 to July of 98, Ellen Brandt Sallis returns to the Citrusville area, half scarred from the Man-Thing's touch. The existence of the scars contradicts the story of Monsters Unleashed number 5, in which her second husband Leonard, a plastic surgeon, fixes her. The nexus of all realities was shattered, and Man-Thing must reassemble the pieces with Ellen as his guide. In issue 4, they encounter a little boy, Job Burke, who is actually later Sallis' son, who had been put up for adoption. And following this series, the story continued in Strange Tales Volume 4, Issue 2, and was projected to continue into the unpublished issues 3 through 4. Summaries based on DeMatteis's unillustrated scripts appear that the K. Ad Mon and Ellen Brandt pages on appendix to the Handbook of the Marvel Universe. Oh, just unscripted stuff. The Sallises eventually saved the multiverse by merging fully with the Nexus, and during the Civil War storyline, 2 S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are sent to the Everglades to register Man-Thing with the Superhuman Registration Act. As he is mentally unfit to sign documents, this is actually a cover for a corrupt S.H.I.E.L.D. boss to take out one disreputable member and put another in his place while he retires on stolen gold. The attempt to destroy Man-Thing fails, and in Thunderbolts issue 144, Captain America, operating as Captain Stephen Rogers, has the Man-Thing serve as the transportation for the, titanular team of supervillains attempting to reform. Later, after traveling to the beginning of time and being exposed to the premortal waters, his physical form is restored, and he is now able to speak the universal language, which is heard in a cohesible form by all who can hear him. And that's pretty much it, guys. That's the entire history of the monster creature known as Man-Thing. I certainly have been wanting to talk about this character for quite a while, so hopefully you guys actually enjoyed it, and you didn't mind me stammering a couple of parts there, because I did kind of stammer a little bit. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this, and as always, guys, as I always say at the end of these videos, and it is so true, stay tuned for the next one.